Hello, BookTube. I've got a little mail for you today, just a couple of packages, although one of them is a box. I've got a periodical, just a little smattering from an early Monday morning. A beautiful, beautiful Monday. Blue skies, fluffy little hints of clouds, no wind, no cold, no chill, no nothing. Just delightful. The Bean and I have been taking advantage of it. A long lounge in bed because, beautiful day or not, she didn't want to hear about getting up until 10. She didn't even want to hear about it until then. And then a walk in order to greet greet her constituents, and then a nice lounge here on the fainting couch while I addressed the overnight mail. I would ordinarily address the overnight mail while we're lounging in bed before I finally get herself up and moving around. But I was reading instead. I read all night long, so I was reading instead and just wrapping that up. So I did the overnight mail here on the fainting couch, and pick and peck at things, neaten things up, get the floorboards ready to take the weight of the day's incoming work. And then once that was done, and she was all wide awake and recovered from the ordeal of going out in the morning, we went on a long walk that was really, really nice, and came back to some mail. And the periodical is a little bit on the sad side. It's a little bit on the melancholy side. It's Smithsonian Magazine, which I subscribe to just because I like their photography. I thought their photography is absolutely beautiful. There's an article in here about an abandoned Viking town. Look at the photograph that it starts with. Look at that. That is just beautiful. And it just goes on from there. I mean, it's a whole article about the artifacts found at a Viking site in England. And it's fascinating. And there are lots of others, too. There's one that I wanted to show you especially because the photographer and the Smithsonian crew go to remote villages in Italy. They go up into the most remote villages that they can find and talk to the people up there and show us little bits of the towns. Here's another beautiful image. Look at that town. That is a stairway going down, little houses there like that. How utterly beautiful. But I wanted to show you the photo spread because I have spent a great deal of time in these very regions. If you were to go to one of these towns, what's one that they name? Ostana in the Piedmont is a fine example. If you were to go to any one of these towns, though that old town with that winding staircase that we just saw, or this place, only before there were power lines. If you were to go to any one of these places and go to the rest home or somebody's house that has a great grandmother, ask the oldest person in the village who's still got a clear mind. Do you remember a time when a guy came through and he had a crowd of dogs with him? And not only did he have a crowd of dogs with him, but our dogs seemed to be with him. He was smooching and playing with them, even if they didn't like humans. Our guard dogs, our sheep dogs, were cozied up to him right away. That person will say, I do remember that, because I've been everywhere. And I always had a welcome. Not always from the stern humans involved. Here's a photo of one of those stern humans, only he's wearing jeans. See the stern look on his face. It matches the mountains where these villages are. And I did encounter plenty of those people. But you know who else I encountered? I encountered plenty of those as well. And his face might have been saying that when I said, I would like, a little room. It doesn't have to be much. It can be a corner of a hay barn. Just to get me out of the weather, and me and mine out of the weather for tonight, maybe tomorrow. I'm happy to pay. The answer from a lot of these people would have been a scornful no, keep going, even though they go to effing Mass every Sunday and call themselves Christian. Their answer would still be no. But their answer was always yes. An enthusiastic yes. An hyperbolic yes. And that was true everywhere. Not just in little towns in Italy, but all throughout sub-Saharan Africa, all throughout Asia, everywhere. That was true everywhere. That was true in a famous anecdote that I could bore you to death with if you were here over wine and calzones in very, very remote Mongolia, where like so many places, it was the determining factor between whether or not I was taken in and embraced or considered an active threat. These are people, both in these Italian towns, but also everywhere, These are people who trust those dogs to ascertain for them whether or not something is a threat or should be embraced. So it was that picture really, that, let me see if I can get it for you again. That picture really did it for me, because that sums up my experience while traveling. A largely skeptical attitude from the natives, and wonderful reception from the other natives. It wasn't always true. There's some places that were more hospitable than others, but that picture made me chuckle. And the reason why this is a little bit melancholy as a magazine is not because there was a pooch inside it, but because I'm going to let my subscriptions to Smithsonian lapse. It's kind of rare, but I'm going to do it. It's the photography is lovely, yes, but the articles are either largely substanceless, or they are excerpts or précis from books that I'm already getting in the mail, or that I'm going to get in the mail. The substance, aside from the photographs, the substance really hasn't done it for me. So I'm just, this issue came with a little, an attached envelope saying, "You're out of issues. Are you sure you don't want to come back?" And their rates are very reasonable, but I don't want to come back. No, the money can be put somewhere else instead, some other subscription. But then we have 2 packages. To get us down out of the Piedmont and back into the book trade. One of them is a box, and one of them is a double-folded manila envelope, which I would ordinarily suspect was one of you, because publishers don't tend to do this. But I'm pretty sure that this is from a publisher, not from one of you. Let's see what we have here. I had to completely destroy that. How interesting. Okay. All right, interesting. All right, this is by Brian Butterworth, and this is called Can Fish Count? What animals reveal about our uniquely mathematical minds? How dare you? I don't have a uniquely mathematical mind. Who is it that's leveling this insult at me? Who is this Brian Butterworth? He is Emeritus Professor of Cognitive Neuropsychology at the University College London, working on the genetics and neuroscience of mathematical abilities and disabilities. He's a fellow of the British Academy and the author of What Counts, as well as several other academic books. And he has a face that you could spend a lifetime learning from. But even so. And his fish are in a Mobius strip, and also the number 8. They're on the cover there. So what have we got here? I have no sheet. Oh, yes, I do. Is this book going to tell me that I am inherently mathematical? That's a hard sell under the best of conditions. I really can't even do basic arithmetic. So let's see. I'm blocking. She's not looking at you. We tend to think of the ability to perform mathematical operations as a uniquely human attribute. Clever Hans. And if you know that name, Clever Hans was not human. One that separates us from our fellow animals. But as cognitive psychologist Brian Butterworth proves in this book, an understanding of numerical ordering and even calculation is not exclusive to humans. Indeed, as the author points out, many species, even apparently simple ones like bees, ants, or fish, have demonstrated a basic concept of numbers. I tell you, every one of these previous islands of human exceptionalism are just withering away. They're just withering away. There's scarcely a one that you can name anymore. Used to be technology, not technology. Used to be language, not language. Used to be culture, not culture. Empathy, awareness of self, now even math. Lions will assess the number of intruding lions when determining whether to fight or flee. Fish seek out larger shoals, which offer them an advantage when it comes to seeking a mate, foraging for food, or avoiding predators. Even ants and bees show the ability to count. Okay, but those first 2 don't show an ability to count. Right? They show an awareness of visual mass, which is not the same thing. Right? A fish seeks out a bigger shoal because the shoal casts a bigger shadow. They're not counting. They're not counting heads. And you say that lions determine whether or not to fight or flee from intruding lions based on numbers. But the only way that you can know that is true is if the lions were facing the invading lions one by one out of sight of each other and counting up the number. Otherwise, what they're looking at is a mass and the size of that mass, which is not mathematical. Interesting. Okay, let's see here. Even ants and bees show the ability to count. Some ant species can count to very high numbers and navigate by counting their steps, while bees count landmarks like trees and fence posts in order to estimate distance and find their way from their hives to their food sources. All throughout the wild, animal kingdom is filled with examples of animals carrying out numerical computations to improve their life chances, but evidence doesn't stop there. Carefully controlled studies conducted in laboratory settings have shown that dolphins, elephants, rats, mice, birds, reptiles, and even invertebrates can learn to make choices that depend on number. Chimpanzees can even do some numerical tasks better than humans can. Okay, all right. So this comes out in late April. This is yet another April finished copy. Fantastic. It comes out in late April. I'm going to read it tonight. And we'll see if the next book also adds itself immediately to my TBR, as my mail tends to do. We'll see if this box has an April finished copy that I will want to read. Let's take a look. Oh my. Oh my. All right. Well, this doesn't come out until May 3rd, but I very much do want to read it. I can't block the bean here. Gotta make sure she's in the picture. This is by Oliver Zunes, and it's called The Man Who Understood Democracy, The Life of Alexis de Tocqueville. Fantastic. Haven't read A Life of de Tocqueville in a long time. This comes out on May 3rd, on the first Tuesday of May. New biography of French political philosopher Alexis de Tocqueville, author of the still widely read Democracy in America. Well, I should hope that it's still widely read. It's a classic. It's great. It's also terrific. It is terrific reading. Democracy in America is terrific reading. And the author has edited de Tocqueville's correspondence and has written the introduction to the Library of America edition of Democracy in America. In 1831, at the age of 25, Alexis de Tocqueville made his fateful journey to America, where he observed the thrilling reality of a functioning democracy. From that moment onward, the French aristocrat would dedicate his life as a writer and politician to ending despotism in his country and bringing it into a new age. In this authoritative, groundbreaking biography, the standard work is 3 times this long. Leading de Tocqueville expert Oliver Zunes tells the story of a radical thinker who, uniquely charged by the events of his time, both in America and France, used the world as a laboratory for his political ideas. Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay, great. Well, I have the previous big biography of de Tocqueville. This thing doesn't come out until early May. Maybe that gives me time to read the previous one by Hugh Bogan. And have it fresher in my mind when I read this one. All right, great. Fantastic. So this is a finished copy. Maybe you give me a bibliography? You give me notes. Do you give me a bibliography? Did you, in fact, consult the previous book that I'm talking about? Well, the bibliography is in English and French. Good. Or the notes of the chapters are drawn from multiple original sources. But what about acknowledgments, index? No. What is it with books that just don't have, with even scholarly books that don't have bibliographies anymore? I mean, what are you insinuating here? Am I absolutely right? Yeah, there's no bibliography in this thing. Imagine coming out with a biography without a bibliography. But it happens all the time. So it's not, I'm not cascading the author. All right, well, there you go. These are both coming up. I don't know that I can quite rationalize The Man Who Understood Democracy tonight, but it's coming out in early May, so you will know about it. If this interests you, you're going to want to put that on your library's request list. And finally, Can Fish Count, which comes out at the end of this month. I can definitely rationalize this. I think the pub sheet is pretty much telling us that the answer is yes. But I'd still like to see what the author has to say on the subject. So there you go. That is The Mail, a magazine that the Smithsonian has reached its final issue with me. I will harvest the really nicest pictures and then let it go. and 2 books, 2 nonfiction books, a biography, great, fantastic, and a work on whether or not non-human animals can count, and to what extent they can. And if so, it raises a whole host of other questions, which is, for instance, are they taught to count? Do their parents or their social groups teach them to count? fascinating. I may put both on my list for tonight, but the can fish count, definitely. So that's your mail for today. I believe that I will be beautifully lit by the sun tomorrow as well, but I think after tomorrow there will be no more sun for a while. We shall see. I will update you, of course, tomorrow, and I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.